Thanks for joining this webinar on inclusive cookery, cooking with children with additional needs or dietary requirements. Hello, my name is Rosalie Forde and I am the Head of Food Technology at Three Ways School. We have 220 pupils with a wide range of special educational needs, and I've taught here for 14 years. My lessons vary and are aimed at ages 4 to 19 with a broad spectrum of needs and behaviours. I teach across the key stages. The focus can vary from early food engagement to sensology, thrive and nurture activities, life and living skills, delivering national curriculum schemes of work and exam groups at key stage 4 and 5. I also support, advise and resource teachers and staff across the school for class-based activities. I conduct food-based research as part of my own studies in CPD, and I work in community kitchens and conduct training and inset days with the Children's Kitchen. And for the last few years, I've consulted and provided case studies for the British Nutrition Foundation's primary, secondary and SEND documents on the characteristics of good practice in food education. What we're going to cover in this webinar is what, in my experience, are some of the challenges and barriers to learning that you may find when doing food-based activities with those who have additional needs. Some strategies to engage and desensitise, and how you can potentially reduce these aversions over time so you can start getting them on the road to more meaningful activities and outcomes. I will highlight some strategies that can help engage learners who are working at early ages and lower ability levels. And then Jo and Gawi will then talk more about allergies and inclusion for children that may also have dietary requirements. Most young people are going to be really excited to join your groups and love the food activities that you set, but you may just find that one or two children struggle to engage. It is important to just think about and be sensitive as to why that may be happening, especially for young people with additional needs. It might be the mood that they're in that day. They could be tactile defensive about certain textures, and I'll talk more about this in the upcoming slides. The activity set may not fit their personal food preferences, or they could find one or two ingredients quite strong and too much. They may not be feeling in optimum health, and it could be for medical reasons that they've had a period of ill health, or there may even be longer term medical reasons. Maybe they were late eaters, have developmental delays, or that up until now they've been peg fed and food is slowly being introduced. They could be fussy eaters, and so an activity like the ones you deliver could be a great opportunity for them to be exposed to new foods. They could be on the ASD spectrum and present with some sensory processing issues, and you may need to focus in on a smaller task that they can achieve success in that still contributes to the outcome or recipe for the session that you're running. They may also have frustrations with their own abilities and have a need for more personalised equipment. They could get stressed when they can't achieve what they would like to. You might find that your role is to help them find a task that they can do well, so they feel pride with their achievements and feel positive about the experiences that they've had. There could also be prior negative food experiences. Some young people suffer toxic stress based in early years trauma, and you may want to avoid activities that trigger outbursts and upset. There could be behavioural challenges and attachment disorders around food and their own historical experiences around the caregiving of food. And another thing to think about is where that young person has been learning and what food experience they've had up until now. So be patient and understanding. There could have been a lack of residence or limited or no access to a kitchen at all at home for the family. The child could have been in multiple care home or foster placements, and then maybe from a family that just has multi-generational lack of food skills and knowledge. So it's really important that the activities you do are fun and create great new food experiences for the children that come to your sessions. Food preferences, we all have them, but we often don't think too much about them. And when initiating activities, it's good to think about or discover if they have any preferred food preferences. This is going to really help you to get them settled in and on task and enjoying the activity. How and where do they like to eat and make food? Are they introverted or extroverted learners? Introverted prefer to be quiet, to be independent, prefer to eat alone, and they can be easily overwhelmed by too many sensory inputs. And for these types of learners, can they work by themselves, at a separate table, or with other similar introverted learners? If it's a small activity, can you simplify tasks to make them more manageable? Extroverted learners are those that don't mind being in an environment that is much more social, noisy, busy and exciting. So can you adapt the space to better suit these needs by working in larger groups? Can you put them next to more confident young people that can also model skills so that they can also learn from their peers and have a constant positive visual of what to do next? How do the young people in your session like to work? Do they have a preference for activities that are unstructured and more messy play, or do they prefer a structured environment and like to know what they're doing and follow a plan with a defined outcome, like make a sandwich? Are they a food separatist or a mixer? What's fascinating about these behaviours is that we all know someone who does this. So some like to follow a preferential order of eating and preparing ingredients and hate their ingredients touching. Others love to make sure that they have a bit of everything all together. I find food separatists fascinating because this could also be defined as quite an ordered, autistic thought process, but I do often see this behaviour in those that are not considered to be on the spectrum and are neurotypical. You just may find that the food separatists struggle when placed next to a young person who likes to explore, mix and layer flavours and textures, and there may be some benefit for you to work out in your group activity who prefers to separate food and have them working together. Equally, the same can be said of textual preferences. Does the child show a textual preference to wet or dry foods? So, for example, some love foods swimming in sauces. Can you add more wet ingredients for those that love the sensation of sloppy, smeary foods, or remove the wet ingredients from an activity or recipe for those that are tactile defensive? Again, can you move those with a dry preference away from a child that prefers to be making soggier foods? If this is not possible, can they use gloves, or you can help them by doing hand-over-hand work? The most important thing is to initiate engagement through a preferred preference activity and have a positive fun food experience. As they make progress, you can always try and see if you can slowly reintroduce those aversions over time. When broadening food experiences and learning about new fruits and vegetables, you might come up against a child who has a total unwillingness to explore or cook or choose them altogether. And it can be because, is the child convinced that you're going to make them eat it? Avoid the pitfalls of using language like you must or you will use this, and try and inspire them by asking, well, could you make this meal for a friend or parent or carer, staff member, relative, or even a cartoon or a favourite game character? For example, if they love Minecraft, can they make a fruit salad in the style of Minecraft scenery? It can also be down to something as simple as someone else has touched their food, so always check. And another strategy that I find particularly successful is to sit a pupil next to a child that enjoys the food they're not willing to eat. Never underestimate the fear of missing out. You can structure a design and make activity like a salad bar with the ingredients in front of them, and you'll often find that as other children take the ingredients, they think, well, wait, I won't have any if I don't get in there and grab some too, resulting in them including and trying those foods they would not touch if you'd asked. It's also important to note that most parents would consider their children to be fussy eaters, so remember to regularly share successes and food choices with parents and carers so that they can build on these experiences at home. It's also really good to be aware of the language of food lessons, and what we say and how we say it often has a real significance when building trust. So avoid the language of pressure, you must finish this, or bribery, if you eat or make this you can then play or finish the task. Emotional blackmail, I'll be disappointed if, or rewards, if you do this you can have this sweet treat, or you can go off and do an activity. And also punishment, if you don't do this you won't be joining. So I'm just going to go over some inclusion examples and some things to think about. think about the child's position. You know, are they seated in a way that they can access the activity without hurting their backs? You know, are they orientated on the task so that it won't hurt them physically? Can they reach the task you have set and feel included? And make sure, you know, you think about how they are seated or standing at the table where they're working. You know, it's not too high or low, but gives them a fair and equal access to an activity. You know, can they see you and the other children in the group? And if they are eating or nibbling at ingredients in the task and are seated, are they upright so that they don't choke? With the visually impaired, can you source brightly coloured equipment? You know, think about the ingredients they're working with. Are they distinctive on the chopping board and against other equipment that they're using? If indoors, is the setting well lit? Can they find the items they need easily, or is the table or task quite cluttered? Make it easy for them to reach and introduce items only as required once they've finished a task. And that's particularly important, especially when they could be profoundly quite blind. So, you know, it's important that they can feel their way around a task without being unsafe, and you feel happy that they are, you know, encouraged to explore, but also with you keeping an eye on your risk assessments. With the hearing impaired, make sure that the child can see your face and that you explore the visuals of food together. Can you introduce any simple signing and role play the actions required, demonstrating visually by miming or demonstrating the skills needed to complete a task? You know, also remember to give a thumbs up and encourage them, and give and receive good eye contact and engagement. I do want to reassure you not to feel frustrated that you don't feel like a child in your group is making progress. You know, every child is different, and building trust, skill development, dexterity and functioning can take much longer for some than others. There have been many studies that challenge our understanding of key developmental milestones. We now know that neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganise by creating new neural pathways to adapt, allows for the potential of positive functional improvements. The brain is far more flexible than we thought, and we learn throughout the course of our life. Simply watching someone complete a task, like holding a knife and chopping, fires the same neurons in the brain in the viewer as the person doing it. So before we do something, we need to think about doing something. So make sure that these young people are included and can watch activities, create experiences where they can touch, smell and explore new ingredients, and use visual aids if possible, and describe and name the ingredients and equipment that they are using and the techniques used. Reinforce and repeat the language for them. For example, we are chopping, and then show them the action. Explain the textures and smells they are being exposed to, and model how to smell and feel differences. Use simple signs and facial expressions to convey meaning. And when I say simple signs, you can obviously use Makaton, or if you're not au fait with Makaton, just the simple everyday signs that we do to each other is just as good. It's that kind of just engaging and kind of acknowledging as well. Also, be aware of your body language, you know, be positive and have an open frame, and use sounds too. So much can be said without saying a word. And if they're struggling with too many sensory inputs at once and find a task too loud with other children, can they use ear defenders? You know, can you get hold of a pair of headphones? And this may be a way that helps them to focus on the sounds when eating, like crunching, and concentrate more on their own senses. I have mentioned using symbols, and I know that this may not always be possible in your setting, but it's just something else that may help to have in your toolkit of strategies. I use Toby symbols, which are true object-based icons, and these are just real images of food that you can find anywhere on the internet, and you can cut around the shape, and if you have the time and the resources, laminate them. You can use them to ask them to point out the carrot in the picture, or on the table, or in the garden growing, and just, you know, use the kind of symbols, just make the symbols for the vegetables or fruits that you're using for that session. There's no need to kind of make a whole host of them. Just do it as you go along, and if it works, great, and then do it for the next one. If not, don't worry too much about it. But it's just one of those ways that it just helps ready them for visual recipes and helps them recognise real world ingredients, equipment. They can be used if you stick them on certain boxes, or where, you store certain items, or if you've got a kitchen space that you're actually using and you want the children to kind of go and help themselves to certain things. It does help them navigate a space easily too. And they can also be used as a communication tool, just to assess how much the child understands and help with choosing, maybe what they want to work with. This is a particularly good strategy with ASD children, with children with autism. Having a now and next strip can really help too. So, for example, you'd say, well, first we're going to grate the carrot, and then we're going to rip the cabbage, and you'd have the picture of the carrot, and then you'd have a picture of the cabbage, symbol next to it. And what you can do is you can take them away, take them off the strip or out of the now and next box, once a task is completed, so that you signify that it's finished. And that really helps the kind of processing of a session of, right, well, we've done this now, and now we're moving on to the next thing, so that you don't have any meltdowns or behaviour issues. You're kind of preempting a child to understand, when something is finished and then what the next thing is to begin. Or it might be that you say, we've done this, and then the cooking session is over. Sometimes you may find the usual calming and soothing strategies don't address some underlying emotions that are driving certain behaviours, and these outbursts can often be based in emotional issues and earlier traumatic memories and experiences linked to food or the caregiving of food. And in heightened states of fight, flight or freeze responses, sessions can really quickly break down. So it's important to find tools and strategies that reduce the amount of stress for the child, but also for you guys, like running the sessions as well. It really helps just keep everyone calm and helps everyone that's involved in the task. So really, my one piece of advice is don't ever engage the primal brain or force food experiences. Find a compromise. Bad food experiences so strongly tied to the fight, flight, freeze mechanism, and the key is to create positive memories to better food experiences. Food plays such an important part in how we feel safe and nurtured and secure, so it's often food-based sessions that can show up some hidden issues. And there are grounding, calming techniques that you can use, all with the added benefit of being sensory, that build gross and fine motor skills, and they improve dexterity and engage the senses. So when in a heightened, anxious or angry state, there's nothing more fun than taking your stress out on a lettuce by ripping the leaves. I find that a child has never managed to get to the centre of a cabbage without calming down and giggling, and what you have at the end is the beginning of a salad or a coleslaw. Holding the weight of a melon or pumpkin is very centering too. And I always have lots of carrots and crunchy veg, as chomping and crunching also has the ability to calm through proprioceptive input to the jaw, which aids self-regulation and helps the child to focus. Whittling a parsnip or a carrot with a peeler improves skill. It's very satisfying, and you can often, if you do have an oven, bake them at the end and make vegetable crisps, or just again turn it into a coleslaw. Using a juicer or push blender also provides instant gratification and feedback too, and the child gets a juice or a salsa out of it. So try and turn negatives into a positive for the child, but very cleverly done, so that you don't have a kind of confrontation. Try and kind of like go, oh, what can we do here, and see it as a learning opportunity. Remember the importance of sensory play. There doesn't always need to be an outcome. Every opportunity around food is great because it builds gross and fine motor skills, and that's what's really important. It might be that a young person loves the herbs, so you spend a session just exploring the smells and flavours and textures and build towards making a dressing or a salsa verde. You can add a bit of water to spices and let the young person explore and finger paint with those, or with just a soft spaghetti brush or leaves. Popping pomegranate seeds and peas out of their jackets is infinitely satisfying and aids their dexterity. Ripping edible flower petals, and just let them explore sort of a certain thing, and then support a young person. So by maybe you could help them build the other parts to a salad so that they can add the ingredients they've been working on, but take home something that they want to share and show off. So help them see the purpose of the small task and how it builds to a bigger recipe. When planning a session, what learners do you have? Do you already have some idea about the behaviours or the needs of the children attending? Can you be prepared ahead of the session? It might be that you don't have that information and you just find out as you go along, and that you have your own experience and find things that work for those young people. Think about the space you're in as well. Can you plan ahead so that should any challenges arise, you can quickly adapt to make your session a success for everyone? Do you have access to resources that you may need, or do you need to make or source any? That might be equipment, but it also might be thinking about preparing the vegetables. So if you've got butternut squash or sweet potato, that would be great if you could soften them up so that it's much easier for young people to chop through or even mash. Do you have any other resources? So we talked about the symbols or other kind of things that you might suddenly decide halfway through a task to switch up if something's not working. Build your toolkit of equipment and resources and have a variety of items like bowls and chopping boards in varying colours. Think about physical needs as well. It might be that for whatever reason a knife doesn't really work for a young person who's got problems gripping and they can't quite get purchase on a handle, and it's much easier for them to hold something from the top, and that's where a plastic dough blade comes in really usefully and makes a great knife. So start to kind of think about what works for you in your setting. Finally, it's important to note that by you providing enriching and varied experiences in food, we can reduce the likelihood of young people eating a limited diet and increase the possibility of them accepting healthy foods. Create a learning space that is full of positive interactions with other children and adults. Think about inclusivity and personalisation for all the young people in your group. Run a session that everyone can be involved in and feel a part of. Once you have a young person in the cycle of engagement and attention and the construction of knowledge, consolidate these experiences to maximise and build on their learning. Always have high expectations, and they will always rise to meet them. And inspire and get them excited about food. Some of our greatest chefs didn't have the best start, had challenges to overcome, and you could be that person starting a lifelong passion and instilling a love of good food.